Hello, my name is Cameron Brunke, and I am a teacher and curriculum coordinator at Liceul Teoretic Școala Mea. Whether you're going to write your own story for the storytelling category or read a published work, the number one thing that I would recommend is that you start with a conflict. You only have 3 to 4 minutes to get through whether it's a complete story or an extract from a larger story. So to, as they say, hook or to capture your audience's and the judge's attention, you need to get right to the conflict as soon as possible. Put the problem on the table and let the audience start feeling the stress, let them start empathizing or sympathizing with the characters immediately. If you wait to introduce the problem or the conflict until later, by the time you get to that 4th minute, it might be too late for the audience to really make a strong connection to what's happening in your story. Now, whether or not your story has a really nice, clear resolution at the end maybe isn't necessarily important. You don't necessarily have to resolve all of the conflicts after 3 to 4 minutes. You can leave a little bit hanging as long as there is a strong sense of progression forward. So that's the first thing that I would recommend, definitely, would be that right from the start you get the conflict, have the characters reacting or interacting because of the conflict, or they're creating conflict, and then just let that grow until possibly the very, very last moment of your story. If you're going to read a part of a published work, whether it's a long novel or a short story, I would make sure that you have your timing down. I think that's probably the most important part. Of course, you should pick a story that you're actually interested in, a story maybe that you like very much, a story that you can relate to the characters. It might be more difficult to present a story that's for adults when you're only 9 years old. So maybe there's a story about a character that's closer to your own age. So when you're reading the dialogue and you're talking about the reaction or the reaction to what's happening in the story, it's a bit more honest. It's a bit more you and believable, especially in the judge's eyes. So when you choose a story, again, make it something that you can easily relate to, but you have to time it. And that's where lots and lots of practice will come in. When you start the timer, make sure you start from the exact same word at the exact same pace every time. When you have pauses, pause for the exact same amount of time. Don't change it every time you practice the story and just hope you get through it by the end. What you might find happening then is that when you get nervous at the real competition, we all get nervous, we all get a bit stressed, and your heart starts beating and your breathing is a little bit more shallow, that you want to speed up. And then you start going faster, and then you don't pause as much. And then what happens, 2 things that happens is, of course, you might finish a little bit earlier and lose some points, but also you're going to lose the feeling. You're going to lose that connection with the audience and with the judge that you were hoping to make in order to get more points, but also just to have a really great presentation and to have fun and enjoy doing it. If you're going to write your own story, it's basically the same thing. Make sure you get right to the problem immediately and that there's some kind of resolution at the end. Again, it doesn't have to be a perfect resolution where everybody lives happily ever after. But make sure that somebody or something changes enough to show that some kind of conclusion has been reached. I would strongly recommend, again, if you're writing your own story, to not include too many characters. Some students are comfortable with maybe doing a voice, changing the accent to fit the character, whether it's an animal or a person from a different country, or an old person or a young person, etc. And that's great. However, even if you're really good at doing voices, you don't want to be doing 3, 4, 5 different voices in such a short amount of time, because then you're in danger of losing your audience, and your audience is wondering, all right, well, who's speaking, or who was that, or I don't understand whose name was connected to that voice. So to make it easier for you and make the experience better for the audience and the judge, limit yourself to just a few characters and then develop those characters. Let those characters interact, let them grow, let them fail, let them encounter problems and work out the problem, which is a lot to do in 3 to 4 minutes. And so maybe you want to keep the number of problems simple, not simple, but a few, but maybe a more complicated problem rather than many, many problems with many, many characters. What makes this category rather unique and exciting is the fact that you can have 2 students performing one story. How you do that, whether it's multiple combinations, but maybe for some of us who get a bit nervous speaking in front of groups, we will be more confident if we have possibly one of our best friends or a classmate standing next to us, supporting us and helping us go through the story. One of the more obvious things would be that one person reads the narrative part and one person maybe does the voices. Although do be careful, this isn't an acting category. You don't want to perform it, you are still reading it. So don't worry about moving around the stage, you can't really do that. Don't worry about having all the facial expressions like you're talking to a kid. You can have a few, but you don't want to overdo it. How you combine or how you interact between the 2 of you, the 2 students telling the story, it's kind of up to you. Maybe one person does one part, the other person does the other part, etc. However, I would strongly recommend not changing your responsibilities during the 3 to 4 minute story, as you might confuse the audience. As long as you're being clear and it's very easily understood which student is doing what, then I think a 2-person storytelling presentation will be very, very successful, and it could be really, really exciting to watch as you're bringing in twice as much talent as you would if you were doing this by yourself. I would strongly recommend watching and listening to people, especially well-known authors or published authors, read their work. YouTube, of course, has many, many videos of different people reading stories. So you could just type in storytelling, blah, 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 and it'll come up with a long list of different storytelling. And what you'll probably see, especially from some of the more experienced or famous readers, authors, performers, etc., is that they will probably just sit, because it's more comfortable to sit when you tell a story. And they're not so much worried about acting as they are about just using their voice. They use pauses, they use their voice, they make sure that every single word they say is understood, especially by a younger audience. Adults reading to adults, they might go a little bit faster at a different pace, they might change it up differently to keep them interested. But you're reading to an audience mostly made up of children your age, except for the judge. And the judge will definitely know and feel if you've made a strong connection with the other students in the room. So you're not just trying to impress the judge by reading something or performing for an adult, but you also want to impress the other students in the room, and then you create this really nice feeling during your story in the whole room and not just aimed at one person, the judge. So definitely watch videos, watch again how they move, and definitely listen to how they use pauses, how they use their voice, how they might whisper, how they suddenly get louder, and then how they continue, and how they may pause in the middle of a sentence. and how they slightly change their voice to show that someone's different, that a different person is talking. And they don't necessarily need to have a completely different voice and accent in order to have a new character speaking. Just a slight change can really make a strong impression. So that's what I recommend. I'm definitely looking forward to this category in particular and listening to what the judges have to say afterwards. I'm sure there's going to be some fantastic stories in the storytelling category, and I think the judges are going to have a great time and possibly even get a lot of inspiration from the different stories from different students.